ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 29, Talks between Narada and King Prachinabhahi. So we are at text 26, 27. So here, Narada Muni's direct description of material existence that is being described from text 26 to 33, that is the section. And we are at text 26. यदात्मानम् अविज्ञाय भगवन्तं परं गुरुं पुरुषस्तु विषज्येत गुणेषु प्रकृते खडक् गुणाभिमानी तत्सदा कर्माणि कुरुते वशः शुक्लं कृष्णं लोहितं वा यथा कर्माभिजायते. Translation.
The living entity by nature has minute independence to choose his own good or bad fortune. But when he forgets his supreme master, the supreme personality of Godhead, he gives himself up unto the modes of material nature. Being influenced by the modes of material nature, he identifies himself with the body and, for the interest of the body, becomes attached to various activities. Sometimes he is under the influence of mode of ignorance, sometimes the mode of passion, and sometimes the mode of goodness. The living entity thus gets different types of bodies under the modes of material nature. Purport. These different types of bodies are explained in Bhagavad Gita 13.22. Purushaha prakrutisto hi bhungte prakriti jana gunan karanam guna sango asya sada asada yoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets the good and the evil among various species. Because of associating with the modes of nature, the living entity gets a variety of bodies from the 8.4 million forms. It is clearly explained herein that the living entity has a little independence, indicated by the word swadruka, meaning one who can see his own welfare. The living entity's constitutional position is very minute, and he can be misled in his choice. He may choose to imitate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A servant may desire to start his own business and imitate his master, and when he chooses to do so, he may leave the protection of his master. Sometimes he is a failure, and sometimes he is successful. Similarly, the living entity, part and parcel of Krishna, starts his own business to compete with the Lord. There are many competitors out to attain the Lord's position, but to become like the Lord is not at all possible. Thus, there is a great struggle for existence with the material world as different parties try to imitate the Lord. Material bondage is caused by a deviation from the service of the Lord and attempts to imitate him. The Lord is imitated by Mayavadi philosophers who try to become one with the Lord in an artificial way. When the Mayavadi philosophers think of themselves as liberated, they are under the delusion of mental concoction. No one can become one one with or equal to God. To imagine this is to continue one's bondage in material existence. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So Narada Muni is describing here how the misuse of the independence under the three modes of material nature. The jiva forgets the Lord, comes under the influence of the modes, identifies with the bodies, and thus performs various actions under the modes of Rajogun, Tamogun, Satogun, and thus keeps on getting different types of the bodies. Karanam gunasangasya sad asad yoni janmasu. Because of association with the modes of material nature, he will get sad asad, good or bad, yoni janmasu, birth in different species of one's life. And the another verse in Bhagavad Gita is Urdhvam Gachanti Sattvastha. That Sattva Guna will give one bodily form, Rajoguna will give another, and Tamo will still another. And thus the living entity will transmigrate with these 84 lakh species of life. Srila Prabhupada explains the living entity has a minute independence. And this is being explained here as Swadruka. Swadruka means the living entity has this minute independence to choose his own good or bad fortune. Right. So this is the meaning of word Swadruka, that he can choose his own good or bad fortune. Right. And that choice depends on the association of the living entity with three modes of material nature, and then everything else follows. And then Srila Prabhupada explains that the living entity comes to this world rebelling against the Lord, trying to enjoy, just like somebody may want to start his own business, giving up a safe job. And of course, now the analogy is partial analogy. Sometimes he may be successful, sometimes he may be failure. And Srila Prabhupada writes here that similarly, the living entity, the part and parcel of the Lord, he wants to start his own business, and he is always bewildered. Right? He is always a failure there, and then in the frustration, he may think he is one with the Supreme, Avimuktamanina, but he is nothing but perpetuating his own bondage. Right. Text 28. शुक्लात् प्रकाशभूयस्ताल् लोकानाप्नोति कर्हिचित् दुःखोत्कारणात् क्रियास्ताम् तमश्चोत्कोत्कटान् क्वचित्. Translation.
Translation: those who are situated in the mode of goodness act piously according to Vedic injunctions. Thus, they are elevated to the higher planetary systems where the demigods live. Those who are influenced by the mode of passion engage in various types of productive activities in the planetary systems where human beings live. Similarly, those influenced by the mode of darkness are subjected to various types of misery and live in the animal kingdom. Purport: there are three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. Those influenced by the mode of goodness are given places in the upper planetary systems, that is Brahmaloka, Satyaloka, Tapaloka, Jnanaloka, and Maharloka. Those influenced by the mode of passion are given places in Bhuloka and Bhuvaraloka. Those influenced by the mode of ignorance are given places in Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala, or the animal kingdom. Qualitatively, the living entity is the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but because of his forgetfulness, he gets different bodies in different planetary systems. At the present moment, human society is overly influenced by the mode of passion, and consequently, people are engaged in working in big factories. They forget how distressful it is to live in such places. In Bhagavad Gita, such activities are described as ugra karma, that is, distressful activities. Those who utilize the energies of the worker are called capitalists, and those who actually perform the work are called laborers. In actually, they are both capitalists, and the workers are in the mode of passion and ignorance. The result is that there is always a distressful situation. In contrast to these men are those influenced by the mode of goodness, the karmis and jnanis. The karmis, under the direction of Vedic instructions, try to elevate themselves to higher planetary systems. The jnanis try to merge into the existence of Brahman, the impersonal feature of the Lord. In this way, all classes of living entities in various species of life are existing within this material world. This explains superior and inferior life forms within the material world. Hare Krishna.
So now this journey of the living entity is further explained. The destination become urdhvam gacchanti sattvastha. They are situated in the mode of goodness, then they will be elevated to the higher planetary systems. And Srila Prabhupada explains like Brahmaloka, Tapaloka, Janaloka, Maharloka. This is the heavens where the Devatas resides. Those who are in Madhya Tishtanti Rajasa, those who are in the Rajoguna, they are happy with the laborious work. And the planetary systems where the human beings reside. Right? Madhya Tishtanti Rajasa. Jaganya Guna Vrittistha Adho Gacchanti Tamasa. Whereas somebody who is influenced by the three modes of material nature, he will be pushed to the hellish planets and the animal kingdom. And Srila Prabhupada explains, which are the planets where they will be pushed to: Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala, or the animal kingdom. So this is how Karanam Gunasangasya Sad Asad Yoni Janmasu. Right. Sad Asad Yoni is obtained by this Karanam Gunasangasya. And then Srila Prabhupada explains there are capitalists and there are those who are there is constant strife between the communists and the capitalists. And similarly also then there are Gyanis and the Karmis. Gyanis, they are trying to merge into the Brahma. Karmis, they are trying to enjoy the material existence. But all this is within the realm of material world, in the realm of three modes of material nature. Text 29. Kvachit pumansa kvachit stri kvachit no bhayon mandari devo nirmushya trayartargva yatha karma gunam bhava. Translation.
Covered by the mode of ignorance in material nature, the living entity is sometimes a male, sometimes a female, sometimes a Inuit, sometimes a human being, sometimes a demigod, sometimes a bird, an animal, and so on. In this way, he is wandering within the material world. His acceptance of different types of bodies is brought about by his activities under the influence of the modes of material nature. Modes of nature. Purport. Actually, the living entity is part and parcel of the Lord. Therefore, he is spiritual in quality. The living entity is never material, and his material conception is simply a mistake due to forgetfulness. He is as brilliant as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Both the sun and the sunshine are very brilliant. The Lord is like the full shining sun, and the living entities are like the small particles of that sun which constitute the all-pervasive sunshine. When these small particles are covered by the cloud of Maya, they lose their shining capacity. When the cloud of Maya is gone, the particles again become brilliant and shining. As soon as the living entity is covered by the ignorance of Maya or darkness, he cannot understand his relationship with the Supreme God. Somehow or other, if he comes before the Lord, he can see himself shining like the Supreme Lord, although he is not as extensive as the Lord. Because the living entity desires to imitate the Supreme Lord, he is covered by Maya. We cannot imitate the Lord, nor can we become the supreme enjoyer. This is not possible. And when we think it is, we become conditioned by Maya. Thus, the engagement of the living entity under the clutches of Maya is brought about by forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord. Under the influence of Maya, the living entity becomes exactly like a person haunted by a ghost. Such a person speaks all kinds of nonsense. When the living entity is covered by the influence of Maya, he becomes a so-called scientist, philosopher, politician, or socialist, and at every moment presents different plans for the benefit of human society. All these plans are ultimately failures because they are illusory. In this way, the living entity forgets his position as an eternal servant of the Lord. He instead becomes a servant of Maya. In any case, he remains a servant. It is his misfortune that by forgetting his real contact with the Supreme Lord, he becomes a servant of Maya. As servant of Maya, he sometimes becomes a king, sometimes an ordinary citizen, sometimes a Brahmana, a Shudra, and so on. Sometimes he is a happy man, sometimes a prosperous man, sometimes a small insect, sometimes he is in heaven and sometimes in hell. Sometimes he is a demigod and sometimes he is a demon. Sometimes he is a servant and sometimes he is a master. In this way, the living entity wanders all over the universe. Only when he comes in contact with the bona fide spiritual master.
So we'll read in two sections. It's a long purport. Kvachit puman kvachit stri. So sometimes the living entity becomes human, male, sometimes female, sometimes human being, sometimes demigod, bird, animal, wandering within this material world. Sad asad yoni janmaso, different bodies the living entity assumes by the modes of material nature. And Srila Prabhupada very beautifully explains in the purport that the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Just like the sun is brilliant, similarly, the sunshine is also as bright as the sun. Of course, quantitatively it's different, but the brilliance is there. Similarly, even the living entity is also Satchidananda Vigraha. He is made up of Sat, Chit, Ananda. But somehow, when the sun ray is caught within the cloud, the sun ray will lose its sun ray will forget his connection with the sun and will start thinking himself as the cloud. And thus he will lose his heat and will start behaving very coldly. Similarly, the living entity, Paropi Manute Anartham, he thinks himself to be matter, he thinks himself to be product of the matter, he thinks himself to be body, and instead of shining brilliantly like the Supreme Lord, right, the living entity gets entangled in the three modes of material nature, covered by Maya, thinking he is the enjoyer, and thus he actually is thinking he is the enjoyer, but he is becoming conditioned by Maya, right? And this is happening because of the root causes, because of the forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord, the Sambandha Gyan. And under this influence, Jira Prabhupada writes here that the living entity becomes exactly like a person haunted by ghost. Right. We have heard the stories of person somebody is haunted by ghost and how he will behave, misbehave, madly behave. Similarly, the living entity, when haunted by the three modes of material nature, starts behaving differently. The same living entity, which in the previous life may be born as a demigod, is happy in the next life as a demon. Somebody is born as a male, is happy next life becoming, the cow. And a large different variety of the forms that living entity keeps on taking. And within that body, they will take all the paraphernalia of the body very seriously. And then by doing this, simply pradhavati, lifetime after lifetime, the living entity will be caught in this entanglement of Maya. Sometimes a Brahmana, sometimes a Shudra, sometimes a happy man, sometimes a demigod, sometimes a demon, sometimes a servant, sometimes a master. And this struggle continues to go on. Yeah, please continue.
Only when he comes in contact with the bona fide spiritual master, he can understand his real constitutional position. He then becomes disgusted with material existence. At that time, in full Krishna consciousness, he regrets his past experiences and material existence. This regret is very beneficial because it purifies the living entity of material conditional life. He then prays to the Lord to engage in his service, and at that time, Krishna grants liberation from the clutches of Maya. Lord Krishna explains this in Bhagavad Gita 7.14. Daivi yesha gunamai mama maya durattaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Only by the grace of Krishna can one get out of the clutches of Maya. It is not possible to get out of mental speculation or other activities. When the living entity understands his real position by the grace of Krishna, he keeps himself always fit in Krishna consciousness and acts accordingly. Thus, he gradually becomes completely free from the clutches of Maya. When he is strong in Krishna consciousness, Maya cannot touch him. In this way, in the association of Krishna conscious devotees, the living entity can get free from the contamination of material existence. In this connection, Srila Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami says, Tate Krishna bhaje, kare guru rasevana, maya jala chute paya, Krishnera charana. In the Krishna conscious state, the living entity engages in devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master. In this way, he gets out of the clutches of Maya and takes shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22.25. Hare Krishna.
The only hope for this living entity is receiving the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. And then he really becomes Bhagyavan Jiv. And this is where the shloka comes in. Brahmanda Brahmite, Kona Bhagyavan Jiv. Constantly we are just rotating in this material universes, Brahmanda Brahmite. The different bodies being explained previously, different situations being explained previously. Guru Krishna Prasade Pai, when he comes in contact with the bona fide spiritual master, then he understands his real position. Jivera Swarupa hai. And then he becomes disgusted with material existence. Right? The same material life. Punah punah charvita charvananam. As Prahlad Maharaj says in the 7th canto. Same thing, become old, go through the life, become old, again continue the next life, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, go to the womb, stay there for 9 months, have next set of the life, continue the life. If one can just look at the JEE books and NEET preparation books, one will decide not to come back to material world. Right? Same thing, life after life. One has to continue doing that. And then finally, Prabhupada writes that one becomes interested in spiritual life and he engages in the service of the Supreme Lord. And the Lord grants him liberation from the material energy. So the service to the Lord is guarantee as the liberation from the material energy. And Srila Prabhupada quotes here, Daivi Esha Gunamai, extremely difficult to cross. Mama Maya Duratteya. Mameva ye prapadyante. But one who surrenders unto me, Maya Mesham Tarantite, one can very easily cross beyond this material existence. So only by the grace of the Supreme Lord, one can get out of the clutches of Maya. Right? Living entity on his own is impossible to cross over. And this grace of the Lord comes by the grace of the spiritual master and association of the devotees. And thus, with associating with the devotees, visiting the temple, correct? Performing our sadhana in the temple, making our house temple-like. What happens slowly is a person becomes strong in Krishna consciousness, and thus such a strong devotee in Krishna consciousness, Maya cannot touch him. Right? And this is the most important aspect here is association of the devotees. Srila Prabhupada quotes. And in this Krishna conscious state, then he kare guru sevan, he serves his spiritual master, Krishna bhaje, worships the Supreme Lord, Maya jale chute, and the Maya jal will go away, and then paya Krishna charan, and slowly one will attain the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 30-31. क्षुत्परितो यथा दीन सारमेयो गृहं गृहं चरन् विन्दन्ति यदृष्टं दण्डं मोदनमेव वा तथा कामाशयो जीव उच्चावचा यथा भ्रमन् उपर्धर्यो वा मध्ये वा याति दृष्टं प्रिया प्रियम्. Translation.
Translation. The living entity is exactly like a dog who from door to door for some food. According to his destiny, he sometimes receives punishment, and is driven out, and at other times he receives a little food to eat. Similarly, the living entity, being influenced by so many desires, wanders in different species of life according to destiny. Sometimes he is high and sometimes he is low. Sometimes he goes to the heavenly planets and sometimes to hell. Sometimes to the middle planet and so on. Purport. The living entity's position is herein likened to a dog's. By chance, a dog may have a very rich owner, and by chance, he may become a street dog. As the dog of a rich man, he will live very opulently. Sometimes in Western countries, we hear of a master leaving millions of dollars to a dog in his will. Of course, there are many dogs loitering in the street without food. Therefore, to liken the conditional existence of the living entity to that of a dog is very appropriate. An intelligent human being, however, can understand that if he has to live the life of a dog, he had best become Krishna's dog. In the material world, a dog is sometimes elevated and is sometimes on the street. But in the spiritual world, Krishna's dog is perpetually, eternally happy. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur has therefore sung Vaishnava Thakura Tomara Kukura Baliya Janaha More. In this way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur offers to become a Vaishnava's dog. A dog always keeps himself at master's door and does not allow any person unfavorable to the master to enter. Similarly, one should try to please him in every spiritual advancement. Apart from spiritual advancement in the material world, if he does not develop his qualities in goodness, he cannot be promoted to the higher planetary system, as confirmed by Bhagavad Gita 14.18. Udvam gachanti sattvastha madhye tishtanti nyaguna vrittistha adho gachanti. Those situated in the mode of good gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets. Those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. There are many varieties of life in the different planetary systems, and these come about due the living entities developing his qualities in goodness, passion, and ignorance. If one is in goodness, he is promoted to the higher systems. If in passion, he remains in the middle systems. And if in ignorance, he is pushed down to the lower species of life. Hare Krishna.
Chutparito yathadina sarameyo griham griham. So, overcome by the hunger, just like Sarameyo. Sarameyo is the dog. Okay, good word here. Sarameyo. Sarameyo is the dog. Just like the dog may, the living entity is exactly like a dog who overcome with the hunger may go from door to door. And according to his destiny, sometimes he may get very opulent food, or sometimes he may be tutkarana, maybe beaten away by the stick. Similarly, the living entity wanders in the different situations in the life, sometimes high, low, heavenly planets, hellish planets, middle planets, so on and so forth. Swadruk, according to his own choice to place himself in a particular mode of the material nature. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that living entity's position is linked to a dog. And dogs, we can see a large variety of dogs, right? Well, you may see a dog who is sitting in a BMW and having a nice Ray-Ban goggle and moving around in the city. And sometimes one boy told me also, Prabhuji, better to become a dog like this, move in a BMW than to struggle like this. And other times you may see a dog who is trying to find some junk food in the dustbin outside and lying in the gutter. Both are dogs, but according to their own destiny, they have received a particular master. Srila Prabhupada says, intelligent human being, because the material destiny is always going to change across the lifetimes, and therefore intelligent human beings should try to become Krishna's dog. Material dog can be up and down, but Krishna's dog is eternally happy. And that's why, when we wear Kanthimala, wearing Kanthimala is considered as I'm becoming Krishna's dog. It's like, the dog will have a belt in the neck. Similarly, this is our belt in the neck, and that is Kanthimala. So when first time His Grace Premnidhi Prabhu explained this to me, 1995, I was asking him that, Prabhuji, why dog? Thoda acha bolo na. Why become Krishna's dog? Dog is like too much, becoming like a dog. But dog has great qualities. What is the quality? First quality is the loyalty to the master. And the second quality is that, the dog will be always well-wishing of the master. So therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself prays that better to become a dog of a Vaishnava. Vaishnava Thakura Tumara Kukkura Bali Ajana Hamur. He offers to himself to become a dog of a Vaishnava. And Prabhupada writes in another book, Prabhupada says, dog, what work dog has? Just be around. Just imagine dog of a rich man. And Prabhupada writes this. The rich man will say, go get the newspaper. And the dog will get the newspaper. And the master will read and this and that. And dog will be must lying in a, the posh apartment, will be moving around in BMW. And just, just being happy. That is the position of a devotee. Prabhupada is explaining. So, okay. A dog is always keep himself at the master's door and does not allow any person unfavorable to the master to enter. Similarly, one should engage in the service of the Vaishnava and try to please him in every respect. Unless he does so, there is no chance of making spiritual advancement. So what it means is one has to take the mission of the master very seriously. And what is the mission of the master? Mission of the master is Prithviti Achayad Nagaratigram Sarvatra Prachar Hoi Bimorana. Otherwise, the modes of material nature, they are always waiting, and the destination is always waiting. Urdhvam Gachanti Satvastha. Right. The planets which are higher, lower, middle, according to the three modes of material nature. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhupada. Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.